Hi, my name is Leah MARVILLE. On paper, I've achieved many things that one would equate to success and even happiness. But I know all too well that we don't experience the peaks of our journeys without traveling through the valleys. Along my own journey, I have been inspired time and again by the way others traverse their own. Life for sure will give you lemons, and I believe our lemons turn out to be our greatest lessons and the guide to our purpose here on this earth. We each have a story that brings its own unique message into the world. This is the true value of the individual, the ability to view the world through a lens that has never belonged to anyone else. The goal here is to share the stories of incredible people in an attempt to inspire us all to tap into the vast potential we each possess. It is my hope that these stories will always remind us that it is indeed possible to create something beautiful and sweet from the seed of that which may seem impossibly sour. Because that is life, and this is Life and Lemonade. So guys, welcome to Life and Lemonade TV. This is another amazing guest. I think Naomi is an incredible woman. I've met her before in Jamaica. We've known each other for a while, just, passing on the scene of entertainment. Met her in TV. I remember when I first saw you, I was like, this girl, she just has a presence. Like, I didn't know at the time officially who she was. She just had come on the scene. Like, I don't know if you came back from Canada to Jamaica, but you just landed on the scene. You're beautiful. You commanded your presence. I was like, she is fire. But Naomi is so much more. I mean, she's a singer-songwriter from Jamaican Canadian, born to two incredible parents as well. Naomi Cowan, who is like a reggae producer and artist as well.
It's been a bit of everything. It's like
everything. Yeah, I mean, he's fantastic.
Everything.
He's also a minister. It's like he was a road manager to Bob Marley, and then your mom, who is Carlene Davis Cowan.
Yeah, I don't know if she uses it, but yeah,
she's an international reggae star. And they both have orders of distinction. Both your parents have orders of distinction. That's pretty incredible. That's quite a family. And then you yourself, I mean, you're a singer-songwriter, like I mentioned just now. You're in television, but there's so much more to besides that. You have a master's degree in digital media, and then you've won all these awards, and you're an incredible intellectual. And I mean, I've read some of your interviews. You describe yourself as a multi-potentialite, which is excellent in different areas, and I think definitely you are that. So welcome, woman.
Thank you.
I've done my research on you, and I see every interview starts with your parents, right? And I mean, it's incredible, it's beautiful, it's a part of who you are. But what is that like for you, and then growing up in that household, essentially?
I mean, honestly, it's the truth is, it's part of my story, right? We were all born to somebody. And it just so happens that a little bit more people know who my somebodies are than maybe the average person. So, I welcome it and I embrace it, because I am because they are at the end of the day. And even their story of coming together, my mom, it's so funny how history repeats itself, because my mom met my dad when she left Canada to come to Jamaica to pursue her music career more seriously. And her manager at the time started to get really busy, and she introduced my mom to my dad and was just like, Tommy, I have this new artist. I need your help with booking her. And, like, the story is that, like, he booked her for life. And I think about just all of the events that had to lead up for that to happen, to manifest. And, for me to come into play, it's actually kind of crazy when you think about it. And I know a lot of children of legendary artists and stuff don't love it, but I know that it's part of my story. And truthfully, they're amazing people, and so I don't have a problem talking about it. But as it relates to growing up in it, it was very adventurous. I realized that my siblings and I really had access to an inside world, right? I think about the fact that I used to be able to sit side stage, or even if I was asleep, I would be backstage or side stage listening and watching people that we consider great, but I didn't know them to be anything other than just like the people that they are. Yeah, it's like Maxi Priest is the biggest deal. I mean, he shaped reggae music for the 90s, you know, or just so many names I can list off, but in my mind they were just my parents' friends. I'm really grateful for that experience. It also allowed me to connect with music at a level that I cannot define. It's literally because I was around it. So the way I connect with music, especially when I'm in the studio or if I'm in rehearsal or when I'm performing, it has nothing to do with a formal training. It was a learned gift, right?
So then does that mean that when you were growing up as a child, you saw yourself growing into a musician? Or
I definitely saw myself as an entertainer. No, truthfully, I kind of rejected the musical side of it because of just being a bit of a rebel, like just wanting to be my own person. And that's why I was in TV, because I just wanted to make a name for myself. Imagine like being 6, 7 years old and you're in a grocery store and someone's like, oh, why don't you sing? You know, like there are people, I'm like, you're not paying me, you know, like. So I think I think there's a part of me that actually got a little bit annoyed with it, and that's just because I might be a little bit stubborn, or maybe I'm very about like making decisions for myself, you know, even if it's the same thing, like if even if I end up at the same place we started. To be honest, I always saw myself in entertainment, and thankfully I grew up in a space that allowed me to express that. So when I was a kid, you know, I tried everything, every extracurricular activity you can imagine, and you know, my parents did the best that they could to provide that space for me.
I think that's beautiful though, and I just recently did an interview and we were talking about exploring yourself, and I think that that's such a critical thing, and I'm grateful as well. In my life, in many ways, my mom allowed me to just explore myself, and I think you authentically kind of land where you're supposed to. So it's no surprise that you ended back up in music with both your parents in ministry of sorts, like, you know, gospel singers in some sort of ministry. How did that then influence you? Because I feel like I can hear it in your music, like in your earlier.
You hear some spiritual vibes. Yeah,
like the organ.
So yes, I love that you picked up on that. So the thing is that it influenced, but also, you know, to be quite honest, in a way it had hindered at some points in time in my life, because even though my parents themselves are beautiful human beings, are accepting and loving, and you know, they're free spirited too because they're artists, but the institution of religion, because then now my childhood kind of went from like, oh, we're this like reggae family, and then all of a sudden every Sunday we're in church. A lot had changed very fast, and unfortunately you would notice, but like religion, especially in Caribbean and Black communities, still is very old school and very like patriarchal and not so freeing. And so it, in a way, it kind of like put a lot of fear into me at some points in time, which I had to overcome on my own. And that's a fear of, you know, what others think, and the fear of the opinions of others, and thinking God is going to strike you down, and, you know, all of these kinds of things. So it's influenced and hindered, but then the hindrances became part of my fight, like the fight to be myself. So I can't complain about it, because it definitely is helping to shape who I am as an artist today. But then there's a lot of times where I write something based off of a Bible verse, because all of them are just kind of floating around in my head.
It's like in your psyche somewhere.
It is. Yeah, sometimes I'll just be talking and I'll just like I'll just say something. I'm like, it's not in the Bible. And then I look it up. I'm like, oh my God, that's so funny.
You know, we go on this long journey, and that's part of the exploration. You start in music, then you know, somehow you're in the church and you rebel against that, and that leads you down this path, and then on that path you discover this, and it all kind of crystallizes eventually and just informs who you are. Your music is like really sweet, it's beautiful. I mean, your voice is incredible. It's like a hug. Your voice is like a hug.
I love that.
But even just like what you choose to write about, what you choose to sing about, I feel like maybe it's informed by that. come back to music, like in 2017, and you moved back to Jamaica. So you made a decision.
Yeah, girl, I made
Let's
that
look
decision.
at why you made a decision. Yeah, let's go to that
Yeah.
point where like, okay, everything else, no, this is what I'm gonna do.
Yeah, wow. So it's such a great question, because it was a series of events that led me to realizing that my best bet is betting on myself. Long story short, I'd finished school, finished my master's, and I'd gotten a really cool job straight out of school, which is amazing. And I started off with a pretty decent salary, right? So I'm living in Toronto. I'm like, okay, so, have a decent salary. I even moved into like a better apartment than the student one I was in. I was living on top of Mr. and Mrs. Chan. And then when I got a job, I was like, finally, like I need to have my own place. So me and a couple with two friends, we found this beautiful apartment. So I was like setting up what I thought was going to be, like next couple of years of my life. So that happens. And then simultaneously, my dad discovers that he has to get his prostate removed. And thankfully it wasn't an emergency, but it was one of those surgeries where it's like, better you do it now. Prevention is better than trying to correct later on down. So we just went ahead as a family, and he had to do surgery in Miami. So I went to Miami, of course, with him and my mom and my sister, like through that whole process. And major surgery is just never fun for anybody. Yeah, so it's in that experience, it really got me thinking, and this is when you realize, oh my God, like my parent is not like my dad is not Superman. You probably go through your whole life thinking that your parents are invincible and all of this stuff. And even though my mom is a breast cancer survivor, when she was going through it, I was really, really young, and I don't think I could perceive what she was going through. And she was just also doing such a great job at, putting on a good face. So in that experience, we're in Miami, and I'm just seeing all this happen, and it really caused me to think about his life and what he's done on this earth and what he's left behind and what's going to happen to everything, right, that they've both done. And so that started a thought process in my head. And then as soon as I get back to Toronto, not even a week passed, and the guys I was working for, they basically told me like, hey, Naomi, we realize that we don't have enough budget for your position. It just dawned on me that nothing is actually guaranteed. So I was like, I may as well do what brings me like the most joy. And I had to really be honest with myself. I just decided to do it, because I realized that if I was, if not now, when are you gonna grow the balls and just, face your worst fears and face the fear of failure, which I think has been one of my biggest fears. And that probably comes from maybe coming from this huge family of like performers and overachievers. So maybe I was just in a safe lane, afraid of what was always knocking at my door. But the truth is that like your greatest desire is going to come with your greatest risk, right? Like, so I had to get to that point, minimize the ego and minimize all of those things that stopped me from before.
So at this point that you decided to do music, you come in as multi-potentialite, right?
Yeah.
All this information as to who you are. What is it that you have decided for yourself to use your voice for?
Because that is constantly, in a way, evolving, right? As I evolve. But the message that seems to recur, and I always end up coming back to, is authenticity through different experiences. What that looks like, I think, for me is so, for example, like energy, right? When we were writing that song, and I was telling them, well, with Izzy, like I just went in, I just told him like what I wanted to write about, and I told him about a specific experience, and then we just started to go in on the story and all of that stuff. And truthfully, like as you may have read, like it was about just a very dramatic situation where I ended up being ghosted, and I was pulled into drama with other woman, and I didn't know, like I had no, wildest thing girl, just terrible, right? So, but the core of it, the core of it was that, oh my God, this whole thing was trying to drain my energy, because it did cause me to shift, and I had to find it back and whatever. So I think authenticity is what I care the most about. And what is really important to me, especially as a woman in this industry, especially as just a woman in 2021, you know, as a Black woman in this world. And because we are often forced into roles, or even if we don't realize that we've been forced into a role, we look around and we're like, wait, I don't know who this person is. I try to use my music as a way to challenge myself to be authentic too.
Authenticity takes great courage. A lot of your music is about love, right? And I know that, you know, life is a muse for musicians. They always write about their life. But I think there is such bravery. Maybe I'm looking at you, I'm feeling my own feelings, but I think it's so brave of you to write about love and breakups and all of that, especially as a woman in the limelight, in your position, because it's scary. It is scary.
It's so scary.
Like even just talking about being ghosted. And
yeah, and it's this the first time that ever happened to me. And then the more I talk to people about it, they're like, oh yeah, I was like, that's a regular thing for you.
To listen to you put that into words and then have people be able to relate and understand that even you know, as Naomi, this potential, like this Renaissance woman, right, goes through the same things. I think it's so necessary.
Yeah.
So I honor your bravery.
I try to use my music to really be that space of even more honesty. So I do try to use it as a way to paint pictures that I haven't completed, or pictures that don't exist, in a vulnerable way. I do think beautiful things happen in that place.
Because I noticed that about your music, it actually inspired me to go into the conversation about love, which I was inspired to ask you, as a woman that has so much to offer, and to have, you're from this family that is like so successful, has so much history, has so much richness, and then you yourself have so many different sides and dimensions to you. And how do you navigate the world of love as this woman? And I ask that because I've come across intimidating to people always. That's like, it's always I'm intimidating. So I'm asking you what your journey has been like. Is it similar? Is it different? What is it? What do you find?
Yeah, first of all, I'm still figuring it out. So here's something that not a lot of people know about me. I actually took I don't want to say how long on air, but I took a very long break from dating and stuff, like for a very long time, which was really great and very empowering and all of that. But then when I came back into it, it's just like you forgot everything, you know what I mean? Like, and so in terms of how I navigate, because I'm not so much of a dating, I don't go on a lot of dates. Like and then on worse, even being in a place like Jamaica where it's kind of small, and people talk, and you just don't know who is who and who's been with who and all this kind of stuff. It is a little bit difficult. So in terms of how I navigate it, it's really where I trust my intuition the most. One of the places I trust my intuition the most, because I know I can feel vibes from people.
What is like the recurring lesson for you? What has your journey so far taught you about yourself?
I think one of the most recent lessons I've learned is about like the concept of self-betrayal, and I only kind of came into understanding what that really meant, even though I realized it's happened before. But recently I just learned a really big lesson on another level of what another level of self-care looks like, which is being honest with yourself first and foremost, and being able to be super honest with somebody else, as a way to prevent A, betraying yourself, and B, hurting them. And then it kind of goes back to that whole thing of authenticity, right? But in love and relationships, it can be easy to lose sight of it because there's so many other things involved. There's feelings, there's romance, there's attachment, there's all of these other issues, but it all goes back to you being true to yourself. If I'm with someone, or if I'm dating somebody, or I'm talking to somebody, and I feel like I'm not allowed, or I'm not feeling like my 100% self with them, and that should be a sign that it's not a healthy place for you. Like even sometimes, like guys that would check for me I think they might expect one thing and get another. And I could play a role, I'm sure. Like I could be, you know, I don't know, the woman that they might think I should be or something like that, as a way to maybe lure them in. But that's not gonna last for much long. That's not gonna last for very long. And so I've definitely constantly challenged myself to just be me with other people, especially with like persons of interest, so that I don't have to make up for it later. I don't want to have to do that.
I agree with you. Like authenticity is a big thing. Knowing not how not to enter into self-betrayal, but also like boundaries, how to take your time, how to really explore how you feel moment to moment moving through something. One of your songs that I really like is Peace of Mind. Oh, good. It's sweet. I really like it. It's so nice. It's just like, even my friend sent it to me and she was like, listen to this song. Because I haven't heard the rhythm or anything as
Thanks,
yet.
friend.
And yeah, I listen to it, and just like how you use your words, like loud and sweet, like how
Yeah.
you know, I feel it. So for you, what is it that you want in love? Like, what is love for you?
Wow, this is so okay, Leah. I'm not even joking. I didn't. Okay, don't laugh at me, but sometimes if I don't have a chance to journal something, I actually just talk about it in the car to myself. This is so. I was talking to myself about that today. In this morning, the things that I do want, I first thing I would say I want is simplicity. And reason why I say simplicity is because life itself is so complicated, right? And society and the world, like, there's just a lot of complications always. There's so many layers and this and that, whatever. And so I feel like if there's something that's going to be a constant, I want simplicity. And what that looks like for me is first the same thing. It goes back to that same thing I started with, which is like just genuinely liking the other person. I just want to like somebody for them, and I want them to like me for me. I don't want circumstantial love. Oh, well, because we were both in the same, you know, or went to college and we just ended up. I just want that genuine, like in Jamaica we say, yo, I just rate the person. Yes. I just like you. I just like you. And I think about like little crushes that I've had along the way, and anyone I've genuinely liked, it has never been because of something they did or said, or it's just because they were, you know. And I love the simplicity of that. The second thing I would say, as it goes back to like simplicity, it's the same, like honesty and communication and openness, where if you can verbalize what you want as early as possible and what your expectations are, and continue to have that open conversation going throughout the process of whatever you're developing. That super simple, honest communication makes a huge difference, because both parties feel safe. I think society also has women thinking that men don't want relationships, and has men thinking that all women want is a relationship. So they know men are, well, this is only like, I'm speaking to heterosexual relationships, but you know, so you have men running away from like any woman, right? You have like men running away from just connection because they're afraid, because in their minds they think every woman like looks at them and thinks wedding bells, when truthfully we just want a companion. It's not necessarily just about a husband. We just want our person. So and then women are constantly afraid of men breaking their hearts. I think if I can just, you know, for me, that simplicity of openness and I think establishing that both people have good intentions towards each other, then it makes that communication process a bit easier. I think also I just want to have a lot of fun. I just want to enjoy it. Because
okay, so now I read that you know in 2020 you teamed up with Washify, and you guys are now on this mission. What can we expect?
Yeah, oh my God. Sometimes I think she's psychotic, but we started to collaborate over the pandemic as a result of just the borders being closed and nobody's touring and performing or whatever. And we didn't start out with an end goal. We just said, hey, let's just get in the studio together. So started working with this female producer. Hey, her name is The Wizard, or Wiz. And we just over a couple months just was vibing every day, writing, recording, repeat. So while she and I sat down one day and we just thought about what was happening in music. He took some ideas from what he saw and witnessed in hip hop, especially, and in dancehall. And he said, why don't you just release music all year? And that was a shocker for me, because especially as a performer, and you want to perfectly craft everything and you want the story. And, I think also you witness other artists rolling things out in a specific way. But when you explain it to me, and I was like, this is a huge creative challenge, A. B, a huge boost to my perception.
Yeah.
My way of things. And I was like, this is a good thing, because it scared me, And so right now what we're doing is we're releasing music basically once a month. But we're first starting out. So we released 2 singles already. And then on the 3rd release, a mixtape will come with it. Right. So it's like a Walshy Fire presents Star Girl. I see music as like a child. I see it as something that deserves love and energy and attention. And maybe sometimes as artists, we get so caught up in same thing, like what people think and and whatever. I was like, just give the music an opportunity to flow. I think about my parents' day and age and whatever, and what the limited resources they had to work with. And when I said limited resources, I don't necessarily talk about the money, talking about the channels and the methodology. My dad would tell me about like days where like everyone lines up in front of one recording studio. Marcia Griffiths, my dad, like all of these Ken Booth, all these legendary reggae artists, just for one session upstairs in downtown Kingston. And that gets pressed on a vinyl, and that's your record. And you run with it and you go to the radio stations. Like that's the hunger and thirst that our music was built off of. And I think, of course, everything has changed and become more advanced. And we now have like major label artists doing all these cool things. But I think like where I'm at, I have the freedom to do that. And why not? I have the freedom to craft my story as an independent artist. So why not? and I think, once again, one of the questions I constantly ask myself is, remember why you decided to do this. And if the reason I decided to do this was to stop A, playing it safe, and B, stop following a prescribed way of living, then when something unconventional comes my way creatively, I kind of lean into it, even though it's scarier, because it means that I feel like it means that there's something there for me.
How do you describe Naomi, the artist or the voice, or how do you describe your music?
First of all, my music is a reflection of my mind, right? And I have a very bouncy brain. I like to use my music as a representation of my journey. And so I would say that I'm going to say it's R&B meets reggae meets 90s dancehall. And the reason why I say R&B meets reggae is because some of my vocal influences, right? Like Alicia Keys was one of the first artists I felt like really inspired me as a kid. And then, I really liked Leah and her whole vibe. I don't know if it's because she was very skinny, and you would know, like growing up skinny, everyone is like, you're so maga, you're so this.
Why don't
Why don't eat? And so I used to look at Leah, I'm like, well, she looks so cute. So I kind of used to feel like, representation matters. That's why this is why representation matters for Black girls and Black boys, because we see people that, whether they look like us in some way, shape, or form, or they kind of like remind us of ourselves, we see that there's potential.
It's empowering. So what is it like you being, and this is from the outside looking in, being a part of this like new school movement of like Jamaican women, female artists in this contemporary reggae kind of vibe? What is the energy like? Like describe it from the inside.
It's so crazy how organic it all has been and how it's become. It was never a planned thing, I mean, truthfully, I've really just done the wildest things in my journey so far, meaning I didn't come to Jamaica like with a plan as to like who I want to work with. I just showed up and I just kept showing up. It just so happens that each person was just on their individual journey, and eventually we're going to cross paths. I knew Savannah from before because we used to sing at the same church down here, you know, and she was doing music from like doing it all the way from way back then. And then it was just going to events and showing, same thing, like it's showing up at events. That's when I met Leah. So it's for me, it just feels like it is what's supposed to have happened, right? And then for me, I know for me, the more that I noticed what was going on, especially as the media starts to pay attention, I think I also kind of tried to prioritize my friendships and relationships in that space, just so that we kept it organic and kept it authentic. How it feels is, it actually brings me a lot of peace when I think about it, because one of the things I used to struggle with was feeling like, why did I take so long to give music 100%? Why did I take so long to come into this part of who I am? And I used to beat myself up about it. I'm not even gonna lie. When I see this happening and how I'm a part of something so, you know, unique and organic, without me having to had done anything but show up at the time that I did, it brings me peace, because it brings me peace that this was the time that it was supposed to happen.
So how important is culture to you? Like, how important is, I don't want to say being Jamaican, because y'all, Jamaica is a whole thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like Jamaica is a whole thing.
We already know. But what is
it?
What does culture mean to you, and like how does that affect your life?
I'm really grateful that I've had opportunities to develop friendships and connections with people that just have had a completely different life experience from me. It's so funny because when you grow up on an island, if you stay there and only know people from there, you just develop one perspective, like one worldview. And then especially in the arts, when you're trying to reach more people and you want to connect with as many people as possible, if you're only seeing through that lens, you really miss out on, you know, the pain and the struggle of many other people. You know, most of my friends from college are actually are Muslim, and they're from Middle Eastern countries. You know, and it's and it's so funny because we find so many similarities in our culture and all this kind of stuff. So for me, culture is super important.
What's a day in your life like?
One of the things that's a staple in my life is coffee.
Oh, me too. Oh my God.
Like
Coffee's like a must. Listen, girl.
And I've been, you know, putting into practice, especially from last year, you know, meditation. You know, whether it's meditating or you know, meditating or journaling. But I don't always, obviously, you don't always get a chance to do it in the way that you want to.
Right.
But on an ideal morning, like I would, you know, put my mat out and like put a guided meditation on and burn and ray and because it's almost like that's my time for me. That I, you know, it really does make you feel like you did something good for yourself, for your soul, that nobody else can take from you. So yeah, that's how the day usually starts. And then so a day like this morning, I went to get my car tire fixed. Then I had 2 back-to-back, you know, interviews, and then after we're done, I'm gonna go to the studio to finish the vocals on the third release. The third single I'm releasing is titled Glowing. It depends on the day, but I'm usually, you know, working on this project in some way, shape, or form.
I ask all my guests, like, what is a quirk about you that only someone living with you would know?
I lose things a lot, maybe. Like I'm that person who's looking for something and it's like on my head top. You know what I mean? Like okay, so last week I'm in the studio, I'm with Izzy. Promise you, Leo, this is exactly what happened. I wish I had 2 headphones. So I have one headphone here, and then we wrote a line. So how he and I work is that we write a line and then we just record it real quick so that it's fresh. So I have like a headphone kind of like caught at the back. Then I'm just gonna pretend like this is a headphone. Then I take another pair of headphones. I was like, all right, dude, let's go. Right? And I put the second pair of headphones on. And I was like, are you ready? I said, where's your headphones? And he's looking around the studio. He's looking around the whole studio, and I actually had two. I had two on my head, and then he looks at me. He was like, "So you don't feel that second? You don't feel that second headphone?"
So the reason I ask this question, I think quirks are so fascinating, and I think they give you insight into just the humanness of people, right? Because so far I've been talking to like Naomi the artist, and then Naomi who you are naturally showed up, but then there's a really human side of you
Yeah.
that the average person doesn't get to see, but that's who you are, and mostly
Yeah.
only your family sees you like that. So
Yeah, definitely something that only people who have slept in the same vicinity, lived in the same house, because nobody believes me when I say it. But it's very common in Caribbean communities and in like in Black America too. So I have allergies, right? So you know that throat scratching noise. That's the quirk. It's not the losing
that
thing.
is that.
Have you ever heard it? You know, like
Yes,
when it's
I've
like an
heard it.
old lady thing. I don't know where I picked up. Like my mom hates it. My dad hates it. They're like, oh my gosh,
Scratching your
she's
throat.
yeah. It only happens like if my allergies are acting up. I realize that I'm like a very unlikely person for that. You know, so
Um,
and then when you do it, you kind of itch your ear at the same time, right? Let me show you. It's like you go like this. And you're like,
So as we begin to wrap up, what do you want for yourself as a woman? And then what do you want the world to know?
I think what I want for myself as a woman is I want to fulfill the desires of, you know, I the 7-year-old version of me. There's a age range where kids, especially girls, are the most fearless. They're the most adventurous because you haven't necessarily gone into that insecure phase of like who's the prettiest girl and this and that. Da, da, da. You're kind of like on par with the boys at that stage,
Mhm.
and you're very fierce. At least for me, and I carry that with me. But I want to make her happy. I want her dreams to come true
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
that's probably the most untainted version of your mind and awareness. I think women are not as encouraged to fulfill those dreams as much as men are. Men get to be boys for the rest of their life,
Yes. Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
A man, let's say like if a guy decides that at 29 he's gonna quit his job to start a business, the world is like, oh, go for it. Like, yes, do it. Start this. Da, 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 da. A woman does that, and it's like, oh, are you sure? Like, are you don't you want to get married, or don't you want to? You don't want to. That's what I want for myself as a woman is to give myself every possible opportunity. I don't want to give
Mhm.
up on myself. I don't want to sell myself short. I think that would fuel my womanhood and eventually, if I become a mom, whether biologically or not,
Mhm.
um, those experiences and those 1,000 tries or whatever will flow into the next life that I have an influence over and
Mhm.
empower them even more than and I think that's what life is about. It's about that cycle. But
Mhm.
if you don't give yourself the best shot, how can you inspire somebody else to do the same? From a genuine place without projecting your fears and projecting your disappointments and failure. I think whatever the next chapter of my life looks like on a personal level, whether it's marriage or whatever, I just want to know that I'm coming into that knowing that I'm still giving myself, like I'm still betting on myself. What I want the world to know about me. I mean, there's things I would want the world to know about me that I don't think I've shared just yet. So much I've gone through that when I think about it or when I share it with someone, they're like, "Wow, you've lived like 500 lives or something like that."
Mhm.
But I've overcome, eating disorders.
Mhm.
I've faced like mental health stuff, and eating disorder is a mental health
Mhm.
problem. I've dealt with so many different chapters in my life, like having $0 in your bank account to there's just been different stages and different walls that I've hit, and somehow like I just have chosen not to go with what's safe for too long. And
Right.
so I think maybe what I want the world to know is that magic happens in that scary place.
Right.
you know, and that I'm not afraid to be scared.
What do you think your superpower is now that you've described all these like different walls that you've hit, right? They equip you with something when you overcome them.
Mm-hmm.
What do you
Mm-hmm.
think that superpower is for you?
Hmm. The superpower that I have discovered through all of it is the power of consistency in small steps.
Mm.
When it comes to like healing from things, how I got over my eating disorder, it's not my eating disorder, but how I
No,
got over
that.
how I got over an eating disorder is when I stopped trying to fix it. It was when I first accepted it.
Mhm.
And I said, you know what? I'm just going to try and spend one day without thinking about this thing. And that day turned into 2 days. And I stopped thinking about overthinking and about the food I was eating. I just stopped. I just said, how about I just act like this is my body? Like, I was like, what if I just pretended like this was how I've always been? You know, like, what if I just, it was so crazy. I can't pinpoint the day when I realized I was over it. So that kind of taught me the magic of like baby steps. And there's this concept called kaizen. It's like a Japanese principle on incremental progress, KAIZEN. And it's about small incremental steps of progress. And I realized that even on the days when I literally do not feel like doing something, even by just making one small step towards whatever that thing is that I'm way behind on, is better than none at all. So I think that superpower is in being able to show up every day and just make small steps and just pray and know and hope that it will add up to a bigger picture that you can't see yet.
I think that's extremely valuable. Consistency and discipline are those are the life-changing things. And I think, we make decisions. It's easy to make a choice, but the work comes in practicing that choice every single day. I mean, I honor you, for even walking that journey and overcoming that, because that is breaking free from a certain mental, a
It's a
cage.
cage.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Cage.
No, that's beautiful, man. If you could leave the space and leave with a message that you think is the most important to a young girl out there, what would that be?
You have everything you need inside of you. And as you go along, the right people will show up to help you get to where you're meant to be. But just remember that it starts with you. All that you can manifest and see happen in your life starts with you, and it's within you. It's never going to be because of somebody else. They're going to help you, and we need people to help us. But I do want more young women to understand their power and the ability they carry to create things and to actualize things.
Thank you for that, Naomi. And thank you for being here and being so candid.
I love any movement or, I don't say show because it's not more. It's more than a show. That what you're doing. To me, it's like a movement. That delves a little bit deeper, and especially coming out of our region is important for certain stories to be told, because some of these stories are not the most glamorous, but truthfully, these are the stories that matter.
Part of the reason why I did this is that I used to get a lot of girls messaging me and asking me, how to do certain things, and they're young girls, and I realized that there was a perception that I had life made.
See
And
there.
if people even, and I think in general, people judge you based on how they view you.
What you look like. I mean,
I think it's so important to share these things because people build a perception that is just not real, and you have to understand that life happens to everybody. It happens to everybody, and I am the same as you, and you are the same as she is.
Absolutely.
Like, we all had our challenges. I didn't grow up with a silver spoon. I come from a small country. It's there's so many things that other people in the corners of the world with their own challenges can relate to, and I think it's important to share.
Totally.
So
And then I think also, like, especially in the career that you started in, which is, it's a front facing career, but how you handle yourself off camera is what helps to determine your success.
right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you can be as pretty as you want, but if you're late for your shoots and you're not, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're not on your shit, then you will be blacklisted very quickly and you won't get the jobs.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like there's certain things about you, and that also means like you might be living in South Africa, or you might be living in New York or London, but you can't be like out there like snorting like drugs and doing this and that, because it's gonna, you know what I'm saying? So I know, I mean, I understand it, but it's hard. Sometimes people need to really hear that.
Yeah.
See the sacrifices you made, or even sometimes the things you turned down, and you know, people offering certain things in exchange for other things, and there's just so much.
There's a cost, that there's a price you have to pay for everything, and you need to measure that price, and you need to, you know, you need to evaluate the life that you want to live. And this is why I think having these types of conversations, because the truth is that this conversation is not the cool conversation that we're having, this mental health, deep, authentic, spiritual, In some ways, spirituality has become trendy, but in a real hardcore, vulnerable way, this is not the cool conversation, but it is a conversation that needs to be had, because it's a conversation that might have helped you earlier on, might have helped me in my younger years as well. So
that about it, girl.
I wish you all the best on your journey, and I look forward to everything that you have to offer. And
when I come to your side, hopefully soon, we need to link up and get coffee.
There's you, baby. You never put up a fight, no. You just